So let's get to the second question. I have no idea how much money people are investing in equipment to make themselves look great on video. I'm sure there is a wide range, but I want to do a hypothetical for people who may not be able to afford a lot of new equipment and stuff like that. So here's the question. If someone had to just shoot on their phone or their built-in computer camera and they had less than $200 to spend to improve their look, improve their studio, what would you tell them to do to get the best possible look? So this could be a combination of what do they spend that $200 on? What do they do? Just even simple things in terms of maybe where they place their camera or where they, I got $200. I want to improve my look. What do I do?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. So $200. I'm going to nitpick that question. You said to improve their look. Are we talking audio too?
I'll leave that up to you.
Okay. Let's include audio, the whole package. So the way that I approach it is like, we don't want to go from 0 to perfect in one go, no matter how big the budget is, because that's just overwhelming, right? And so you kind of want to approach it in multiple steps. The first step is getting rid of all the stuff that's actively hurting you. What are the things that are pushing people away? And bad audio is one of those things that even if you want to hear the content, if it's bad audio, it's actually painful to listen to. And so we want to remove that. And so if you have really bad audio, getting some sort of cheap microphone, like the lavalier mic, for instance, for like $30, I think you can get on Amazon. That's probably one of the ways to go. Or otherwise, just moving a microphone closer to you. So that's removing the negatives. Also, if you have any situation where the window's behind you and they can't see your face, again, that's a negative. There's no person to connect with. So getting yourself visible in the shot, all that stuff's super important. And then once you get into spending budget for like gear, I'd say usually we recommend getting a nice camera, but that's probably out of the budget. The reason we do that is because like the optics of how our eyeballs see stuff behind you is blurry, stuff in focus where you're looking at is in focus. And so you can't really get that with a small, tiny lens and tiny sensor. But if we're working around that, I'd say the two biggest things to think about is lighting and background design. So now we're focused on making the thing the camera's looking at look as good as possible, right? And so in order to do that, with lighting, you want to make sure that you're not just shining a light straight dead on, like deer in the headlights. It's kind of the mugshot look. It's like you can't even tell any terrain on the person's face. They just look flat. And so what you want to do is take any light source you have and you want to move it a little bit off to the 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock position to give a little bit of a sense of depth. You can kind of see here on my right side of my face, it's brighter. Here's darker. Yeah. You can still see my whole face, but it gives you the sense of it wrapping around my face. And that gives you more of that kind of cinematic look. So you could play with having a window, instead of in front of the window or the window behind you, kind of turning off to the side. And then think about the background design too. Again, it comes back to signaling, right? So the more you can show intentionality, the more we can go away from the blank white wall or the green screen look. Those kind of just signal, I was too lazy to do anything about this, right? And maybe you don't
How dare you?
right? Like, or you just moved it to a new house.
You nailed it. I get it. I'm just kidding with you.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's something
guilty as charged.
What was that?
Guilty as charged.
I think we all start there though, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the reason we associate that with the low budget setup or the low effort setup is because it's just so common. If every house in the world was automatically painted blue, my setup would be the low quality setup. And yours would be like, wow, you took the effort to paint your setup white. And so think through like what would make your space look intentionally set up. And so sometimes there's like equally good choices for things in terms of furniture, but one makes it look more like an average bedroom and one makes it look like I don't know, like a cool museum or something, right? Even if they're the same price and you have like equal taste for both of them, pick the one that like is a little bit less common. Because people are going to start to think, wow, this person took the time to set up their thing. Their content is also probably really well thought out.
Let's talk about lighting on a budget. So would you recommend they buy some sort of light? Again, if they don't have a lot of money, but obviously some lights, you can get lights that aren't necessarily that expensive. Could they repurpose an existing lamp they have? Like, how much difference does that make? What would you recommend someone, how they handle lighting?
Yeah, good question. So with lighting, one rule to follow is, in general, the more lights you have, the more you're able to do, right? Because when we think about design, bringing everything back to designing for attention, right? What is attention? It's making something pop and something recede. You have to have both. Otherwise, if everything's super bold and shouting at you, it's actually worse than everything, being in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so to do that, we have to create some stuff that pops and some stuff that recedes. So we can kind of draw the eye towards what's closer to the camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So lighting allows you to do that. Lighting allows you to see what is closer and farther from the camera. And so the more lights you have, the more you can do. So for instance, if I turn off this light here, right, you kind of don't really get to see my face as much. So it's like, okay, number one, you can see my face, right? This allows me to connect with the audience. And then I have another light up here.
So just really quickly, so for people who are watching this on YouTube, which if you're listening to this, go to my YouTube channel and watch it on YouTube, especially this episode. So just talk me through, how many lights do you have on you right now and where are they positioned?
Right now, this is kind of my lazy setup. I have only 2 lights. Sometimes I have another light, but if you want to get into it, I kind of like taking these tech, what's the word? Like tech specs type of stuff and turning them into like the more human like way to understand them, right? And so you have the main light, the primary we call the key light, right? It's kind of a little bit off to the side of my camera. It's this big light source and it's diffused across a white sheet, right? And so that helps to illuminate my face and it goes from one side over to the cheekbone, 85% of my face, right? That is so that human beings, we connect with faces. If we can't see a face, we can't connect, right? And then the other light we have is like kind of the top light. People call it the hair light. I just call it the top light, so it's not as confusing. The reason we have this in here, you can kind of see, like, if I turn off my top light, I kind of start to fade into the background, right? You see how, like, the edges of me are not that crisp, especially my hair. Like, my hair is just completely like a black hole now. But now I have this. You see how I just pop so much.
Right. And so are both those lights on the same side?
So I have my key light over here in front of me.
That's like above, sort of pointing down on you, angled, sort of?
Yeah, it's almost like kind of like an awning a little bit. So I'm touching it right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the exact position, you kind of move it around it, change it up a little bit, but you just kind of want it relatively above you, pointed down at you, a little bit off to the side to get that fall off. And so the next one is, I have a top light here, right? And so it kind of signals, like, where do you ever see a top light? At a concert where you've paid to attend, when, you're waiting for that person to say something. At a museum where you see a famous piece of art lit this way, or like some profound architecture or something like that. So it signals to us that, hey, this person's super important, or this message is going to be something that kind of touches a little deeper.
And is that top light literally right above your head?
Yeah, it's right here.
So it's right. So it is like it's directly above. So one is sort of in front of you, angled a bit. The other is sort of directly above, shining down on the top of your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so that one kind of gives you that sense of authority, credibility, that focus, right? I usually have another one turned on, but again, I just was lazy today, didn't turn on.
Yeah.
But that one kind of crosses over to this side of the face. My setup was a lot darker, or if I had darker skin, I would be kind of fading off into the shadows here. Right? You kind of see my hair is a little darker on this side, right? Like, it's not getting much illumination. And so we have that one to kind of fill in some of the shadows. We don't want any harsh shadows because psychologically, it's like, oh, are you hiding something? On every movie poster, if there's a villain in the shot, the villain usually has some really dark shadows on their face. Right? If you pay attention to that, you kind of notice, like, that's how we kind of quickly signal that this person is not to be trusted.
Right. It's unconscious signals that we're so used to by this point that we pick up on and are sending a message. What about in your background, what I assume is the shadow of a plant or something? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just have a light off to the corner and it's just shining onto the wall. And it just happens to be another cool way to add some texture. So when we're thinking about designing a setup, we want to sort of balance, we want to make it interesting. We want to fill up the background, but we don't want to clutter the background. Like, the background should always be playing a supportive role to grab the person's attention from outside the frame, whether it's another tab you're scrolling through or something else in your room, to grab the attention to the video and then pass that attention on to you. And so this is like a texture that allows me to add some stuff without cluttering and drawing the attention.
Without actually having something in the back. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So any other, let me sort of flip that question just a little bit and say, so if you don't have a lot of money, that's kind of some stuff to think about spending it on. Maybe audio is even the place to start, some audio, some lighting. What do you think people that have limited budgets what are the mistakes they're making in terms of spending? They go, I only have $200 and I went out and bought this. And then you're like, that's not, you could have done better than that. What do you think people that have limited budget are wasting money on for their studio setup?
Let me think about that. One of the most common things that I see is people buying a ring light because it looks like the YouTuber setup. It looks like the TikToker setup, right? And I think that's a big mistake because if you think about why people use ring lights, they are for when your face is super close to the camera and you can put the camera in the center so you can light your face from all around so you don't get any like harsh wrinkles in your face, right? And so that's only useful if you're shooting makeup videos or like a music video where you're super up close. As soon as you sit down like this, and we're usually like kind of like informational or like thought leader type videos, those ring lights immediately lose their purpose. Because if the ring light is that far away, it's just deer in the headlights now, like the mug shot setup we talked about. And so I'd recommend not getting a ring light, but instead actually choosing the light based on what you need it to do for you. Another costly mistake, I'd say probably if you buy a camera, a lot of cameras come with what's called a kit lens. And it's just a lens that's okay for everything, but not the best at anything. And so what I usually recommend people do is think about your camera and lens separately. Your lens should be a part of your studio itself, because just like a painter has to choose the size of their canvas, right? And the size of the canvas determines what they're painting. In your space, if you're going to shoot super wide and you can see everything around you, you're going to design your background a lot differently than if you only had to see, 4 square feet on the wall behind you, right? You'd have a lot less effort you have to put in and all that stuff. So the lens determines how wide you can see. So I'd recommend people don't spend extra money on a full camera plus lens kit and discard the lens. Just get the body only and then buy the right lens for their space.
Gotcha.